Hi boys and girls, this is Mr. Wong. This is the video of the enzyme in part 3. In the previous part 2, we will see there are different kinds of properties and functions of enzyme, and there are some specific words for you to describe enzyme. Let's say complementary shape, lock and key theory, and also hydrolysis and condensation in their functions. So coming back to the part 3, we will introduce you different kinds of factors which would affect the enzyme activity. So before we talk about different kinds of factors directly introduced to you, I actually think that you have already tried with me in the lessons in the IT lab with this simulation and the timer here. If you can recall, we try to set the parameters like this at the beginning, and we try to count or with your group mates by yourself to start the experiment, and we try to count the time that it needs for having each 5 new product to produce, alright, by the enzyme. So from the experiment itself, you can see the relationship of how does the enzyme work and how would they change according to different variables. So if you try to think about if you want to investigate for different factors, how do they affect the enzyme activity, that means the speed of reaction, what you should do, as I told you before, should be changing one of the variables here. Alright, so let's say for the first one, if you got more enzyme, how would this affect the enzyme activity? I'm sure you know. And let's say going back to the original setting and you try to change more enzyme, let's say changing to 50, how would this setting affect the enzyme activity? Alright, and let's say again we got to go back to 25 and you try to do the next one. For inhibitors, we would not really go through about inhibitors in year 8, but I will really encourage you to try it by yourself, and if you can tell me about something about how inhibitors can affect the activities, I will privately give you a gift on that. Alright, if you are the first one to tell me how it works. So going after the inhibitors, that will be the temperature, right? For temperature, it will be a bit tricky. Since the first parameters that you try is 25, I would want you to compare with a whole series of temperature. That means maybe you can try from let's say 10 degrees Celsius, alright, although you can't really look different here, but when you try to record down the result, you will definitely know. And then you try to go for maybe 25 or 20, and then maybe 30, 40, and try to see how they look differently and how does the time would be changed. And obviously you can see that this is faster when the temperature is higher. Alright, when temperature is higher, or 60 even faster with the higher temperature, and faster and faster. But it doesn't mean that the time that you need would also be shorter if they move faster. So think about that. How would you describe the reaction when the temperature is changed from 10, let's say from 10 to 80 here? So going back to temperature 25, let's say, for the container size, I'm sure you really like to set in this way, right? Of course, container is 0, it doesn't work. So let's say we start with 100. Alright, what does it mean with smaller container then? It means that the concentration of the enzyme substrate are higher when you have a smaller container. Of course, it's more concentrated, alright, with to the volume itself. So just by changing the container actually would not really give you much idea, because you actually change the enzyme and substrate at the same time. I mean the concentration of enzyme substrate at the same time. So usually I would just make it fixed. But of course, you know that if you make container smaller, the reaction will be faster as well. For pH value is a bit similar for temperature here. So let's just say if you got pH 3, you try to do it with pH 3 or even with pH 1. Alright, you see how does it work with the substrate and record down the time, and also recite with 3 and try with maybe 7 and try with 10. Alright, and see how it looks like, and then try with 14. Alright, and record down the results. So before you try to listen to me about the 4 factors affecting the enzyme activity, I want you to try to think by yourself about what are these 4 factors and how would they affect the enzyme activities. So could you try to get a piece of paper and try to write down in your notebook and try to write down 1, 2, 3 and 4 and what are the factors would be. Alright, I can give you the hints that of course the first one must be the temperature. Alright, and you try to think about how are the other 3. Alright, if you have finished writing down this, you can try to proceed on the link below for the second part, well, like for the part B of part 3 video on YouTube here.